Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today we are once again building something from Batman, and I know some of you are thinking, why did I paint that helmet pink from the intro? This is a build for my sister-in-law, Christina, and she is a huge Batman fan. Her favorite color is pink, so I thought I'd mash the two together. Now, I'm recording this before Christmas, before I give it to her, so fingers crossed she will enjoy the build and the helmet end result. I think it's going to turn out pretty cool, but we shall see. Today, we are building a Batman Arkham Knight style helmet for my sister-in-law. Let's get to building. If you want to make one of these helmets with me for yourself, download the free template down in the description underneath the video and cut it out. The cover page goes into depth about what my markings are on the template and give you extra info on what you may need for the build. I trace my template onto some 6mm HD foam from SKS and cut it out. Next step is to do a little heat forming on some of the pieces. I use the glass globe off my back porch light, heat the foam up with a heat gun, and push it onto the round shape. This process allows the foam to bend closer to the shape it should be at its final point and will decrease the stress put on the seam lines during glue up, meaning less gaps in your finished product. If you don't get the shape just right, it's okay. You can always do a little more heat forming after the glue up is done. You just have to not heat up the seam lines. Assembly for the base is pretty simple with very few pieces. Add contact cement to all the edges and let it set up. I usually start by closing up the big V's on my pieces. These are called darts and they allow the shape to round. Then using my registration lines, I start piecing it together. The general part orientation is up there at the top left of the screen with my pattern laying out on my table. Rely on those little hash marks and try to keep the outside of the helmet as flush as possible to save yourself a little bit of sanding later. Even if you're able to line up the outside edges, you'll always have a little bit of areas that may sit proud. I put a stone bit on my rotary tool and go over all the seam lines to round it over and smooth stuff out. My dummy head you see me use quite often is quite a bit smaller than my actual head, but perfect for this build since it doesn't have to fit me. I trace the orientation on the back piece, overlays, contact cement the base and the parts, then tack them together, working from the middle outward to keep it symmetrical. These are the earpieces for my Arkham Knight helmet, and while I did use a reference image to get a general idea, I kind of modified and simplified bits here and there to make it easier on myself and you. I assemble it all, then put it on. Notice my tips are out of a different type of foam. I'm using What the Foam from Cosplay Apprentice for them so they don't bend. It's also a 6mm foam like the rest of my foam, but a much denser EVA than the rest of the helmet. No need to put support wires in it. Here I'm putting the chin and the jawline details on, once again close to my reference images but altered because I can. I put a V-groove on the underside of the chin piece and tacked it on. I also went ahead and beveled some areas to help each part stand out better from each other. To connect the chin to the jaw, I used some 10mm half dowels. I also added some to the backside of the helmet for extra little detailing. I just hold it up to the area I want to place it, score some lines, cut it, then super glue it into place. Keep in mind that I make these patterns as I go, and here's an example of where I had to build it first before I decided on the eye placement. I would wait till it's assembled to cut out the eyes since it is right underneath that seam line and may mess with your lining up a part. I also pulled the sanding drum off the bit of my Dremel just a little to add some buttons by plunging it into the foam. Then I changed to a different bit to make some small inset rivets. Two coats of Plasti Dip, then I taped off everything but the main base and spray painted it a watermelon pink. Yes, pink. Instead of trying to perfectly line up the shelf liner onto this angular helmet shape, I figured it would be easier to make myself a texture roller. I glue on the shelf liner to a 48mm EVA dowel from my scrap bin and roll on a faux carbon fiber texture. If you mess up, just wipe it off and try again. After hand painting on all the other details with various colors from Plaid Effects acrylic paint, I hot glued in my lenses. These are just pieces cut from a replacement face shield that you can get from Amazon or the hardware store. And we are finished. Here is the end result. I'm very pleased with the way this thing turned out. Now, I don't know how it's going to fit because it's a lot smaller than my head, which was done on purpose because obviously my sister-in-law's head is not the same size as my head. So I'm guessing that this will fit her head. It fits my wife's head, so I figured that was about the right size. If you want to build this yourself and you've got a ginormous head like I do, you're going to have to size up the template just a little bit. Maybe 110, 115% is probably what I'd have to build it to make it fit me. But I think it turned out pretty cool. And I kind of like the pink paint scheme. I think it looks pretty awesome. Maybe you'll try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to build something so dark and sinister, while at the same time being light and pink and lively. Sure. Maybe you'll get some...
Yay!
And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, much props. There's only one other thing that I could ask for.
Justice.